Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to explore the concept of sacrifice in Islam. We'll be using an article called Sacrifice in Islam, Devotion and Significance as our source. It's going to be fascinating.
It really is. This whole idea of sacrifice, it's something you see in so many different cultures and religions. But today we're going to focus specifically on what it means in Islam.
Right, and I think the best way to really understand it is to start with the story of Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just a historical event, but a story that has so much meaning for people all over the world.
So let's set the scene for our listeners. Allah commands Ibrahim to sacrifice his son Ismail. It's like the ultimate test of his faith. Can you imagine? I mean, being asked to give up the thing you love most?
It's hard to even comprehend, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, Ibrahim had to choose between everything he held dear and his total faith in Allah, and he chose obedience.
Wow. That really shows how strong his faith was. But just as he's about to do it, something incredible happens.
Yeah, divine intervention.
Yeah.
Allah sees how willing Ibrahim is to sacrifice everything and sends a ram to be sacrificed instead of Ismail.
So it's not just about the act itself, right? There are so many deeper meanings here. What does this intervention tell us?
Well, I think it shows Allah's mercy. It shows that he accepted Ibrahim's pure intention, and it recognizes the incredible depth of his faith.
It really makes you think about the whole nature of sacrifice. Our source talks about four key aspects of sacrifice in Islam. The first one is obedience, that willingness to submit to a higher power, even when it's incredibly difficult.
Right, and if you think about it, we're always having to make choices and decide what's most important to us. Sometimes that means, giving up something we want for something we believe in, even if it's hard. Have you ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all have those moments when we have to, make sacrifices for what we believe in or for the people we care about. Sometimes it's something small, sometimes it's huge. But it's always about choosing something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And that's, what I find so interesting about this concept. It's both really personal and something that everyone can relate to. What about those other layers of meaning that the article talked about? Anything stand out to you?
Well, the second significance, the idea and closeness to Allah, that really resonated with me. The idea that sacrifice isn't just an outward action, but an internal spiritual practice, something that can deepen your connection with the divine. It's like a physical way to show your faith, a way to experience something that's, intangible.
It is really interesting how we as humans in all kinds of cultures try to find ways to connect with our beliefs in a physical way. Lighting candles, offering flowers, going on pilgrimages. It's all about making something abstract into something real.
Yeah, that's so true. It's about creating a space for that connection to really show itself. Okay, so we've talked about obedience, closeness to Allah. What else is there?
Well, the third one the source mentions is selflessness and devotion. This is all about being willing to let go of something you really care about, something valuable, for something bigger than yourself. Makes you think about human nature, doesn't it? Are we basically selfish, or are we capable of putting something else first?
That's a really deep question. And I think the idea of sacrifice really shows that we do have that potential,
Mm,
that we can be selfless, that we can devote ourselves to something bigger than ourselves.
absolutely. And then there's that fourth significance that the article highlights, the idea of sharing blessings. This is where the social aspect of sacrifice comes in, the idea that we're all connected and that we should help those who are less fortunate.
Right, like the tradition of giving the meat from the sacrifice to the poor and needy. It's not just symbolic, it's about actually meeting a need in the community.
Exactly. It's acknowledging that we're all human and that everyone deserves to have their basic needs met. So we've covered quite a bit here, the story of Ibrahim, these four core meanings of sacrifice. But how does this all connect to what we actually see happening during Eid al-Adha?
That's a great question. Let's move on and look at how these really profound ideas are actually lived out during one of the most important celebrations in the Islamic calendar, Eid al-Adha.
And welcome back to our deep dive into sacrifice in Islam.
We've been talking about the story of Prophet Ibrahim and all those different layers of meaning behind sacrifice, and how it all connects to Eid al-Adha.
But now I really want to get into how these traditions, these ideas, can actually be helpful in our lives today?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? What lessons can we learn from all this, even if we don't celebrate Eid al-Adha ourselves?
Well, the source we're looking at actually mentions three key takeaways that I think are really relevant for everyone, no matter what their background is. And they might surprise you with how much they apply to the world today.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the first takeaway?
The first one is this idea of sacrificing for something bigger than yourself. And this goes way beyond just giving up, material things.
I can see that. It's more about realizing that there are things in life that are really worth sacrificing for, like maybe a dream you're working towards or a cause you really believe in, or even the well-being of your family.
Exactly. It's about making sure your actions match your values, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. Think about all the sacrifices people make every day.
I'm thinking about parents working long hours so their kids can have a good life, or students pushing themselves to reach their goals, or people volunteering their time to make a difference.
Those are great examples. It's about people putting something bigger than themselves first. And this principle, it's something we can all apply to our own lives. What sacrifices are we willing to make for our own dreams, for the people we love, for a better world? It makes you think about what's really important to you.
It does. It's easy to get caught up in our everyday lives and lose sight of the big picture. But this reminds us to ask ourselves, what am I really willing to sacrifice for?
The second takeaway that the source talks about is generosity and sharing.
And that goes back to what we were saying before about the social side of sacrifice, helping others, even if it means giving up something ourselves.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected, that what happens to one of us affects us all. And it doesn't have to be some big dramatic thing.
Right. It could be as simple as being kind to someone you don't know, or helping a friend who's having a hard time, or donating to a cause that's important to you.
Exactly. Even the smallest act of generosity can make a difference. It helps to create a more caring and fair society. It's about shifting from me to we.
I like that. From me to we. Okay, so we have sacrificing for a greater purpose and generosity. What's the third takeaway?
The third one is strengthening faith and obedience. Now, this might mean different things to different people depending on what they believe.
Right, but I think the idea behind it is universal. Whether you call it faith or having a moral compass or just having values that guide your actions.
That's it. It's about living your life according to your deepest principles and trying to live in a way that has meaning and purpose. And that takes discipline and, looking at yourself honestly and being willing to challenge yourself.
It's about trying to become a better person, making sure your actions match your beliefs. But let's face it, living by these principles isn't always easy.
No, it's not. We live in a world that often tells us to just go for what we want right now, where it seems like everyone's just looking out for themselves. But these principles, they offer a different way of thinking about things.
They remind us that real happiness comes from helping others, from making the world a better place.
And that's a message that I think everyone can understand, no matter who they are or what they believe. So as we finish up this second part of our deep dive, I'm really struck by how much these traditions can teach us today.
Me too. They have this timeless wisdom that can really help us, deal with all the complicated things in our modern lives and find ways to be happier and more fulfilled.
But we're not done yet. There's more to explore. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive into sacrifice in Islam, where we'll leave you with some things to think about and some challenges to consider. See you soon.
And welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring sacrifice in Islam, starting with the story of Prophet Ibrahim, and it led us to the heart of Eid al-Adha.
Yeah, and we've seen all these different layers of meaning, practical examples in these timeless lessons about sacrifice, generosity, and faith.
But as we wrap up, we don't just want to leave you with information. We want to, spark something more, leave you with something to think about, a question, even a challenge.
Right. It's time to shift from analyzing to reflecting. Because, in a world that's always saying me first, instant gratification and all that, where does sacrifice fit in? Where does it belong in your life?
That's a really important question. Are we, in our search for instant rewards, are we losing sight of how powerful sacrifice can be? How it can change our lives, but also change the world around us?
Think about it. What if embracing sacrifice could actually help us create more meaningful, more fulfilling lives? And not just for ourselves, but for our families, our communities, even the world as a whole.
What if we stopped asking, what's in it for me? And started asking, what can I give? What can I contribute? What am I willing to sacrifice for something bigger than myself?
It's a big change in how we think, isn't it? And it doesn't have to be about these huge gestures or changing our whole lives. We can start small.
Hmm.
Where in your life could you practice sacrifice and generosity?
Maybe it's choosing to volunteer instead of, watching TV, or maybe setting aside some money to donate, even if it means giving up something else.
Maybe it's just being more present with the people you love, putting your phone away, and really listening even when you're tired or stressed.
Those are great examples. It's about making those choices, even little ones, that show what you believe in, your commitment to something beyond yourself.
And I think you'll find that even those small acts of sacrifice, they can make a difference.
Hmm.
They can inspire other people, create positive change, and ultimately lead to a more fulfilling life.
There's that saying, you can't keep a good deed a secret. It shines like a light. And that light, that's the real power of sacrifice.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into sacrifice in Islam, we really encourage you to think about this concept.
Explore how it can make your own life richer, how it can empower you to make a difference, and how it can connect you to something bigger than yourself. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.